On the day I graduated as valedictorian, my parents chose to attend my brother's baseball game instead. Their phones started blowing up during the 7th inning, with calls from neighbors watching me receive the biggest scholarship in the state's history. They thought my academic achievements were a quiet, personal hobby, while my brother's athletic prowess was a spectator sport worthy of their investment. They forgot that some games are played for much higher stakes than a plastic trophy. Keep watching to see how the unimportant ceremony they skipped became the most significant public event of their lives, for all the wrong reasons. My name is Amelia, and in the grand competitive arena of the Miller family, I have always been the intellectual equivalent of a chess club, while my younger brother, Kevin, is the Super Bowl. Our family life is a testament to the idea that the loudest wheel doesn't just get the grease. It gets a custom-built, climate-controlled garage and a lifetime supply of premium fuel. Kevin is a baseball prodigy, a local hero with a golden arm and a batting average that our father Frank can recite with more accuracy than his own wedding anniversary. Our house is a shrine to Kevin's athletic journey. Shelves groan under the weight of trophies, walls are plastered with framed newspaper clippings, and the family calendar is a dizzying mosaic of game schedules, practice times, and out-of-state tournaments. Frank, a man who views life as a series of win-loss columns, sees his son as his greatest victory. My mother, Diane, is the team's head cheerleader and publicist, a woman who can turn a routine groundout into an epic tale of grit and determination. My achievements, on the other hand, have always been quiet, internal, and largely uncelebrated. I don't hit home runs. I solve complex equations. I don't have a cheering section. I have a well-worn library card. My victories were things that happened on paper, in the silent, solitary pursuit of knowledge. My perfect report cards were met with a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before the conversation inevitably pivoted back to Kevin's upcoming playoffs. My acceptance into the state's most prestigious university was acknowledged with a brief, perfunctory nod. In the Miller family, if it couldn't be cheered for from a set of bleachers, it barely registered as a success. This dynamic reached its apex with the scheduling conflict to end all scheduling conflicts. My university graduation, a day I had worked towards with a single-minded focus for 4 grueling years, a day where I was to be honored as the class valedictorian with a perfect 4.0 GPA, was scheduled for the exact same Saturday as the state high school baseball championship game, in which Kevin was the star pitcher. The choice, for my parents, was never in question. "Amy, be reasonable," my father had said, his tone one of a man explaining a simple, immutable law of physics. "This is the championship. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your brother. We can't miss it. It's a family obligation." The irony of him using the term family obligation was so profound it was almost comical. He was framing his choice to miss his daughter's highest academic achievement as a noble act of familial duty. My graduation, in his calculus, was a personal, optional event, while Kevin's game was a mandatory, all-hands-on-deck family spectacle. "It's just a ceremony," my mother added, her voice full of the placating sweetness she used whenever she was dismissing my feelings. "You walk across a stage, they hand you a piece of paper. We'll take you out for a nice dinner next week to celebrate. We'll even let you pick the restaurant." The day of the graduation was a bright, cloudless Saturday. As I put on my cap and gown in my small, empty apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. It was a picture of her and my father in the stands, their faces painted with the high school team's colors, their grins wide and performative. The caption read, "Go Tigers! Wish you were here." The cruelty of it, the casual, thoughtless twisting of the knife was breathtaking. I didn't respond. I walked to the university stadium, a solitary figure in a sea of celebrating families. I found my place in the long, robed line of my fellow graduates, the low hum of their excited chatter, a stark contrast to the silence in my own heart. I delivered my speech to a sea of thousands of strangers, my voice clear and steady. I spoke of the future, of the challenges and opportunities that awaited us. I did not speak of family. I did not thank my parents in the crowd for their support, because there had been none to thank. After the speeches, the dean of the university, a formidable woman named Dr. Al-Jamil, stepped up to the podium to present the final, most prestigious awards. She spoke of a new, landmark scholarship, the largest in the university's history, established by the reclusive tech billionaire and alumnus Harrison Kane. It was the Kane Foundation Legacy Scholarship, a full-ride scholarship to any graduate program in the world, coupled with a 10-year research grant and a personal mentorship from Kane himself. It was a golden ticket, a life-altering prize of staggering proportions. This year's inaugural recipient, Dr. Al-Jamil's voice boomed across the stadium, is a student whose academic record is not just perfect but pioneering. A young woman whose undergraduate thesis on quantum computing has already been cited in several peer-reviewed journals. The recipient of the Kane Foundation Legacy Scholarship is your valedictorian, Amelia Miller. The crowd erupted in a roar of applause. As I walked towards the podium, my legs feeling like they were made of water, I saw the flash of cameras from the press section. I saw a television crew from the local news station zoom in on my face. In that moment, standing in the bright, unforgiving sunlight, I was the most celebrated person in a stadium of thousands. And 100 miles away, my parents were sitting on a set of hard, splintery bleachers, watching a group of teenagers throw a ball around a dusty field, completely and blissfully unaware that they were missing the only story that would matter. The moment the news broke, it was like a digital tidal wave. The local news station, desperate for a feel-good story to lead their evening broadcast, ran with it. The headline was irresistible. Local girl, daughter of a plumber, wins billionaire's golden ticket. They loved the narrative, the story of the quiet, unassuming genius from a blue-collar family who had achieved something extraordinary. They had found my parents' names in the university's records, and in their quest for a heartwarming family reaction, they had dispatched a reporter to the baseball game. The 7th inning of the state championship was a tense, nail-biting affair. The Tigers were down by 1 run, with 2 outs and a man on third. The entire stadium was on its feet, a sea of screaming, face-painted fans. Frank and Diane Miller were at the epicenter of this chaotic symphony, their faces a mask of pure, unadulterated focus. Their world, in that moment, was 120 feet of dusty baseline. And then their phones started to ring. Both of them simultaneously. They ignored the first call, their eyes glued to the field. Then a second call came, and a third. A text message buzzed. Then, another. The people sitting around them, their neighbors and friends, started to get calls too. The entire section of the bleachers began to hum with the low, insistent vibration of a dozen cell phones. Frank, his face a mask of annoyance, finally ripped his phone out of his pocket. It was his neighbor, old Mr. Henderson from down the street. "Frank, what the hell is going on?" Henderson's voice was a frantic squawk. "Are you watching the news? Turn on the news! It's Amelia! She's on every channel!" Diane's phone was also buzzing. It was her sister, my Aunt Carol. "Diane! Oh my God! Have you seen? Amelia! That scholarship, they're saying it's worth millions! Millions! Why didn't you tell us?" The game, the championship, the entire universe of high school baseball suddenly and irrevocably evaporated. They were no longer the proud parents of the star pitcher. They were the conspicuously absent parents of the girl who had just become the biggest news story in the state. The local news reporter, a young, ambitious woman named Brenda, found them moments later. She shoved a microphone in my father's stunned, slack-jawed face. "Mr. Miller!" "Brenda Sanchez, Channel 4 News. We're live. Your daughter has just won the Kane Foundation Legacy Scholarship. An incredible achievement. The whole state is talking about it. What are your thoughts? You must be bursting with pride." Frank just stared at her, his mind a frantic, sputtering engine trying to catch up to a reality that had just lapped him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He looked like a fish that had just been unceremoniously dumped on the deck of a boat. Diane, ever the publicist, tried to recover. She grabbed the microphone, her face a grotesque parody of a proud mother. We are just speechless," she stammered, her eyes darting around at the now staring crowd. "We always knew our Amy was a special girl. We are so proud of her. We had to be here for her brother, of course. Family is so important to us. We support both of our children equally. It was a valiant, if utterly transparent, attempt at damage control. But the image was damning. There they were, in their ridiculous face paint, at a high school baseball game, while their daughter was achieving something monumental 100 miles away. They weren't just absent. They were caught red-handed, their priorities laid bare for the entire world to see. The story that aired on the 10 o'clock news was a masterpiece of unintentional comedy. It cut back and forth between the footage of me, poised and articulate, accepting the award on a grand stage, and the footage of my parents, flustered and ridiculous, trying to explain their absence from a set of cheap bleachers. The reporter didn't have to editorialize. The juxtaposition was its own brutal commentary. They had chosen the wrong game, the wrong hero, the wrong story. And in doing so, they had made themselves the punchline. While they were trying to spin their story to a local news crew, I was in a quiet, elegant boardroom on the top floor of a skyscraper, shaking hands with Harrison Kane himself. He was not the reclusive, eccentric figure the media made him out to be. He was a quiet, intense man with eyes that seemed to see right through you. "I read your thesis, Amelia," he said, his voice a low, thoughtful rumble. "Your work on quantum entanglement, it's not just a theory, it's a roadmap. You didn't just get a scholarship today, you got a partner. My resources, your brain. We're going to change the world together." I walked out of that building, not just with a scholarship, but with a future I couldn't have even imagined 24 hours earlier. As I stepped out onto the street, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. "We need to talk," it read. I just looked at it for a moment, then typed out my reply. "I'm a little busy right now," I wrote. "I'm changing the world. You're at a baseball game. We'll talk when our schedules align." I turned off my phone. I didn't need to hear their excuses or their belated congratulations. I was no longer a quiet, uncelebrated part of their story. I was the author of my own. And the first chapter was going to be magnificent. The fallout from my parents' televised humiliation was swift and merciless. They had spent 2 decades carefully constructing a public image as the perfect, supportive, all-American family. That image was shattered in the span of a 3-minute news segment. They became the talk of the town, the subject of 1,000 hushed conversations at the grocery store and the post office. They were no longer the proud parents of the local sports hero. They were the clueless parents who had missed the biggest moment of their daughter's life. Kevin, my brother, became an unfortunate casualty in the blast radius of their folly. He had won the championship game. It should have been his moment of glory. But his victory was completely overshadowed by my own. The local newspaper, which would have normally featured a front-page picture of him on the pitcher's mound, instead ran a massive, above-the-fold photo of me shaking hands with Harrison Kane. Kevin's championship win was relegated to a small blurb on page 6 of the sports section. He came home a hero, only to find that the parade had been rerouted to a different city. The first time I saw my family after the graduation was a week later. They had summoned me to the house for the celebratory dinner they had promised, and the atmosphere was thick with the cloying sweetness of a funeral home. The air of performative grief was almost suffocating. They weren't mourning the death of a relative. No, they were mourning the death of their own narrative. The one where they were the wise, supportive parents of a local sports hero. My father, Frank, dispensed with the pleasantries almost immediately. The public humiliation had stripped him of his usual bluster, replacing it with a raw, transactional desperation. There was no attempt to justify their absence with talk of integrity or commitments. That ship had sailed, sunk, and been salvaged for scrap on live television. This was a damage control meeting, and I was no longer his daughter. I was his only remaining asset. "Amelia?" he started, his voice a low, urgent hum, completely devoid of its usual paternal warmth. "I've been doing my homework on this Harrison Kane. On his foundation. This isn't just a scholarship. It's a launchpad into a world we can't even comprehend. We're talking about a level of wealth and influence that is significant." He paused, looking at me not with pride, but with the sharp, calculating gaze of an investor sizing up a new stock. "You cannot go into this blind. You're a smart girl, but you are new to how these people operate. You need a team. You need a manager. You need someone in your corner whose only interest is protecting you." He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table, the picture of a CEO making a final, critical pitch. "Your family," he concluded, "we will manage the financial end of this. I'll handle the investments. Your mother can handle the public relations side of things. It's the only way to ensure you're not taken advantage of." The audacity was so pure, so perfectly distilled, it was almost beautiful. He wasn't apologizing, he wasn't even trying to reconnect. He was attempting a complete takeover of my future, a conservatorship, framing it as a loving act of protection. My mother, Diane, ever his loyal second-in-command, jumped in on cue. Her face, which had looked haggard and strained all week, was now animated with a frantic, greedy energy. "Think of the galas, the charity boards. You'll be a public figure, darling. You'll need someone to manage your image, to make sure you're presented in the right way. I can do that. We can do that together. We can finally be the family we were always meant to be." They didn't see me. They saw a golden lottery ticket that had just landed in their laps, and they were frantically drawing up a contract to claim their percentage. The only person at the table who seemed to grasp the reality of the situation was my brother. Kevin had been silent, staring at his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. The state championship trophy he had brought home sat on the mantelpiece behind him, a sad, tinny little thing that seemed to shrink in the heavy silence of the room. He hadn't spoken a word to me since I arrived. His hero's welcome had turned to ash in his mouth, his moment of glory completely eclipsed. He was yesterday's news, a footnote in the much larger, more incredible story of his sister. He finally looked up, but his anger wasn't directed at me. It was a cold, bitter fury aimed squarely at our parents. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice low and trembling. "You're just going to move on to the next big thing? You spend 20 years building me up, telling me I'm the one, that my games are the most important thing in the world, and the second she gets a bigger prize, you just drop me? You just want to be her manager now?" He let out a short, harsh laugh that was devoid of any humor. "My championship game was on page 6 of the paper," he said, the words tasting like poison. "Page 6. Because the front page was a picture of her. You did this. You made the choice, you picked the wrong game, and now you're trying to pretend you were on her team all along." He pushed his chair back and stood up, the first honest person in the room. He looked at me, and in all sincerity, I didn't see the golden boy athlete. I saw a confused, resentful kid who had been a pawn in a game he didn't understand. "Congratulations, Amy," he said, the word heavy with a bitter sincerity. "Looks like you won." He turned and walked out of the room, the sound of his bedroom door slamming shut a definitive end to the conversation. The silence he left behind was profound. He had said it all. He had exposed their pathetic, transparent maneuvering for what it was. My father looked flustered. My mother looked wounded, but I just felt a quiet, clarifying calm. I finally understood. They weren't capable of changing. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a better investment. And my brother was right. I had won. I stood up, my appetite completely gone. I looked at my parents, at their faces now etched with a new kind of panic, the panic of realizing their last, best offer had just been rejected. "Kevin is right," I said, my voice steady and clear. "You did pick the wrong game. But the prize was never the scholarship. It was me. It was your daughter, and you weren't there to claim it." I walked to the door, the finality of the moment settling over me. "I'm moving to California next month to start my work with the Kane Foundation. The team Mr. Kane has assembled will be managing my affairs." I paused and looked back at them, two strangers sitting at a dinner table, surrounded by the ghost of a family they never really were. "You won't be involved. Not in the finances, not in the public relations, not in my life. You made your commitment. You chose to honor it. And now I'm honoring mine, to myself." I walked out of that house and I didn't look back. I was leaving behind the Miller family and their small, dusty world of plastic trophies and hollow victories. I was walking towards a world of infinite possibility, a world I had built for myself. One book, one equation, one quiet, uncelebrated achievement at a time. and I was finally going to get the cheering section I deserved.